Thank you so much for following along until now with the demo talks, and I'm sure you've made a bunch of exciting connections now that might save the world down the line. Of course, now is our chance to save the world in this panel, and well, maybe we'll see. And we have a pretty crazy group of people up here today. We have sort of the entrepreneur, the scientist, and the investor, the three different perspectives. I think that's like the intro to an Avengers movie, right? But first off, we've got Eric Ho, who's the CEO and co-founder of Goodfire, $250 million interpretability company with Anthropic as direct investors. And he was one of the earliest also to post on the publicly about this concept of for-profit AI safety. So we've chatted for quite a while too. We have, and maybe you want to say hi as well quickly.
Hey everyone, Eric. You just introduced me, but good to be here and excited to chat a little bit about AGI safety. Yeah.
Great. I'll do a quick introduction, and then I'll just let you also explain yourself instead. Yeah, so Buck is the CEO and founder of Redwood Research, and
yeah, we're a nonprofit organization, research organization in Berkeley, mostly focused on mitigating AI misalignment risks, but more generally focused on thinking carefully about futurism related to AI and trying to identify ways to make things go better. I used to work around here when I was a startup person in my early 20s or whatever, and it's nice to come back to San Francisco and think about what I think of the startup people. So excited to talk to them.
Nice. So we hope to get a bunch of hot takes here. That's perfect. And Nick, you want to give a quick intro?
Yeah, I'm Nick. I'm the founder and managing partner of a fund called Juniper. We invest in many of the companies here doing AI safety and security work.
Fantastic. And I'll mention, of course, also a co-founding member of Selden and has just had an exit on a startup that was announced yesterday. So congrats for that. Nice. Okay. I'll try to set the stage first here with a question for all of you. I'm curious to hear from you guys. So instead of talking about timelines or something like this, I'm curious to hear, when do you expect to see potential catastrophic consequences from AI? So like potentially even human lives lost as a consequence of AI itself. So maybe just starting from Eric's side.
That's a big question to start off. So the way that we kind of plan for the future and think about kind of our impact is we're kind of planning for a world with lots of kind of human level intelligences performing like relatively long range and agentic tasks in the kind of like 18 to 24 month period of time. So that has a bunch of implications. There's potentially widespread job loss as a result. There's, I think, just a lot of kind of our day-to-days are going to be run by AI rather than, our human brains kind of doing things. And so that's kind of how we think about almost like intercepting the progress of AI models in the future. Whether there's human lives lost in the next 18 to 24 months, I don't know. But that's kind of as far out as I feel kind of comfortable kind of planning and like thinking about on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, I think that AIs plausibly have already killed people or like led to them dying. There was the news story recently of some, person with dementia who ended up talking to their chatbot and like went to Brooklyn and died as a result of this. To be clear, I don't think this clearly means. I feel a little weird saying this because I think there's an inaction-action thing. Like I think also chatbots produce a bunch of value. And for example, if suppose we were the first company to develop telephone lines from America to India, presumably some of the conversations between Americans and Indians would lead to someone dying or whatever. Because just like if you have a lot of interactions that have a big effect on what people do, some of those randomly end up with people dying, and that's okay. So I would say like individual people dying in ways that were kind of the AI company's faults already happened, probably will happen more times in the next couple of years. The first time 1 million people die from a single basically a single AI thing is probably if like people do bioterrorism using AIs, which seems like less than 10% likely to less than 10% likely to happen, but I think the risk is already amplified from that, and I think that if that happens, it's probably in the next couple of years, like a single number of years. And then the first opportunity for more than 1 billion humans to die from AI is probably related to the possibility of AI takeover. I think that AIs probably can't take over until they're generally more capable than humans. I think that that's like median 7 years away.
I think many of the, that's a great answer. I think many of the timelines reflect people's psychology more than anything else. And it's a very hard question, sort of, how do you attribute this? Like, you know, sort of as Buck said, I think a lot of this is around bioterrorism, but is it that it gives you the instructions? Is it that it orders the stuff off of the internet? Like, what do we actually mean here? And I think, you know, I don't have a good sense, I think, is the answer here. Like, I could probably like whatever Metaculus has currently.
Fantastic, thank you. So with that spicy question out the way, I'll direct some to you individually, and then have some also from the audience down the line. So first off, Eric, I'm very curious about your journey in the sense that you originally wrote this post about some for-profit AI safety ideas. And you've, of course, decided to work on interpretability. Are there some technologies also looking at, well, the companies today that you are still excited about, but you think have been completely underutilized or under-invested in now?
Yeah, that's a good question. I haven't looked at that list in a while, but I kind of, you know, when I was first deciding how I could contribute and help in AI safety, I thought a lot about kind of the options, the potential for various ways to intervene and actually help through kind of this like VC-backed company methodology of making an impact, where you can just kind of like hire more people, raise more money, and kind of make a bigger impact as a result. I think simulated environments are really interesting. So I don't see very many of those, both in terms of kind of more like, you know, RL environments are getting a lot of popularity and a lot of interest. Kind of simulated personas are potentially pretty interesting. Yeah, those are probably like the two thoughts that come to mind.
Great. And you recently wrote on why interpretability is extremely important still. And curious just to hear your take now as you've had this journey in the past year plus.
Yeah, I guess I'm pretty interp-pilled, as they say at this point. I just really believe that like we'd rather have a future where we deeply understand the AI that we're deploying in mission-critical contexts rather than not understand them really at all. And I think that there's just an enormous opportunity and potential for us to deeply understand and edit and debug these systems rather than just kind of throw in more data and update the entire network whenever you have a problem. And so I think it's yeah, if you think about AI as a generation of software, it's really weird that we can't actually edit them, we can't debug them at all, and can't really look inside. And I just really am more hopeful and optimistic than ever that we can really solve a lot of the fundamental scientific questions about interpretability of how representations in models actually form, how intelligence forms in these models, you know, in the first place. And that's kind of what we're doing at Goodfire, really trying to answer a lot of these like really fundamental foundational questions about why these models are acting the way they are.
Fantastic. And directed at you, Buck, you've done quite a lot of analysis of like the impact story of specific research fields, of specific technologies. And what have been some of your considerations for how this research and how the technologies in the idea stage turns into scalable solutions deployed? Is that through the labs, or is that through startups here, or is that through some other means that you see have a lot of opportunity?
Yeah, so I feel like a substantial part of how I think about prioritization of research is imagining that I was in control of everything, but I had a limited budget. So for example, when I'm imagining developing AI safety techniques that eventually maybe an AI company will have to use, obviously there's going to be some reason why the AI company implements them. But I think a lot of the time it's easy to get caught up in thinking through the mechanisms that you could use in order to get AI companies to implement stuff. Like, should we be trying to push for some kind of regulation? Should we be making friends with these people or whatever? And I think that in my experience, I found it very valuable to just ignore all those questions and assume that I can just do whatever I want because I run the company I run whichever company, but I'm under this budget constraint. Like, I'm only actually able to afford to spend 4% of my budget on doing stuff that I think is going to be good for mitigating risks. And that, that budget constraint forces me to do things that are most economical, which is the answer to the question, like, why don't we be super careful or something? Or like, why don't we like put truly vast quantities of resources into this? Another budget constraint I often think about is you're a company and you're able to go 2 months slower than you would otherwise have gone, but you die if you go slower than that. Therefore, anything you implement has to only delay you by 2 months. And I think that this has been very productive. I think that a lot of the work we've done on AI control was inspired by realizing that so many of the techniques and the methodologies we were thinking about in that way look really good in terms of the ROI that kind of ROI framework. But to answer your actual question, the main mechanisms that I think about for getting the kinds of techniques that we develop or the techniques that I advise on development of implemented are, making friends with people inside AI companies, either convincing them that they should at a high level commit to doing something, or convincing the particular people who are in charge of doing a particular thing, like convincing the security team to do something, or convincing the people who are going to be in charge of designing agents to do something, and then talking to regulators, talking to people in government, talking to people who are going to side-eye companies if they don't do things a particular way. So I think really all of these mechanisms are pretty valuable.
Fantastic. Now, apropos mechanisms and apropos solutions and the actual technologies, of course, Nick, you've invested in a lot of different companies at this stage, and each company solves some specific problem. What has been the types of technologies that you've been most excited about, and especially in this impact story?
Yeah, I've been most excited by, Eric's a good example, and what Goodfire's doing. They've been able to hire sort of an unbelievable amount of talent and very high quality. I'm surprised that more people aren't doing this kind of work. There's a company that we support called the AI Underwriting Company that builds insurance. I think they might have the best shot on doing evals well. I think most evals should probably be nonprofits and third party. What Rune is doing creates sort of aligned incentives. They're both doing certificates and standards, and then also just selling insurance and sort of creating a market for risk. What Christian's doing is very interesting to me, and it's been very valuable, and it has sort of these regulatory tailwinds. And then I'm surprised there isn't more sort of physical infrastructure or stuff around energy or SL4 and SL5 data centers. There's some of this that I'm intrigued to see, but there's been less of that than I would have expected.
Yeah, agreed. And I think Lucid is one good example of it, right?
That's right.
In the context of Selden 2, I think we've been very been surprised at what sort of companies come out of the visions of founders. You could all hear that people think very deeply about the problems related to AI as well. And I'm curious to hear, have there been some that you've been very surprised by, where you were like, wow, I didn't expect this to be a thing that we could do through the markets?
I didn't expect real-world evals or vending machines to become run this way. It's been sweet. I think I've been surprised by the amount of people that are interested in working on this stuff. It's maybe for many people quite a boring topic. There's we're talking about investing in compliance or regulation, and there's been a lot of people that I think feel the sort of urgency around it and are interested in building things that scale. Otherwise, what have I been surprised by? I think, I would like more people to build stuff around energy infrastructure and around sort of physical stuff in data centers. What Christian's doing is really great, and I think there could be more around sort of understanding the environments in which they're built. And then I think sort of more deeper, there could be more work around sort of auditing compute. And then maybe more mechanisms like insurance. I didn't expect insurance to be so valuable. I've only seen really one company doing it in this way, but more sort of incentive-aligned mechanisms like this.
I do want to echo one thing that you said earlier, which is just that I feel like people are coming out of the woodwork to work on safety and safety problems. With the just increasing model capabilities, I think more people are kind of waking up to the potential risks and potentially divergent paths in the future that we can have. And it's just really cool and inspiring to see just so many people kind of coming out and just really wanting to work and contribute to this really big problem. So it's good to see.
Agreed. I think it's one thing that's been incredibly fun in the last 3 months has just been how ambitious and how high growth and how impactful these organizations can be and the people involved. So get to it, you know. Another question for you, Eric. I'm curious on these topics as well, and like what's sort of been developing in the field, but you're practically a veteran now. After your 1+ year as an AI safety company, right?
Yeah, single year
yes,
of
exactly.
building.
And this is, I mean, there aren't many others in the field in this kind of scale. And I'm curious to hear from you. What did you wish you knew like 2 years ago as you started your journey towards AI safety?
Yeah, 2 years ago, I was just kind of I'd been somebody who, you know, was thinking about these problems, but just felt like, you know, future Eric could deal with them like 3 decades down the line. So I wasn't really like, this was like, I don't know, 3-4 years ago before ChatGPT came out. So as soon as ChatGPT came out, that was kind of my wake-up moment, the moment that slapped me across the face and got me to start paying attention. I think when I first started looking into the field, I felt like an outsider, didn't really feel like I'd been keeping up with all the news, and like took a good deal of time to try to map out what was actually going on, what was happening, and I was pretty surprised to learn that the global community of people thinking about AI safety was like under, I don't know, 200 or 300 people at the time. And I felt like that was bad, and we were massively outgunned by the problem in front of us. And I think that when I was first kind of going into the field, I just thought that I was some guy, but I just feel like, you know, you just need some guys to go out, and some guys and gals to go out and do and build and get stuff done. And I think a lot of the thing holding us back is just like going out. I feel like this word is overused now, but just having agency and going out and just kind of starting the thing and getting it done. So I think there's just a lot of potential to make an impact just because the field is so nascent and so small.
Completely agree. There's a lot to get done, and not too many doing it. So there's a lot of opportunity too. There's been a discussion in AI safety as well about this question of whether profit can actually be a good motor, a good drive for safety. And I'm curious to hear your perspective, Buck, on like what is the tension here that you can see when we talk about for-profits as compared to non-profits that you run, as I've run as well, and this question of making sure they're independent and all these questions that's been running around.
Yeah, sure. So I feel like, so here's the basic argument for for-profits being a bad idea. You want to do some stuff that you think, or suppose you're me, right? And you want to do some stuff which is good for minimizing catastrophic risk from AI. You need some money because you need to buy like whiteboard markers or computers or whatever it is that you do. So you need to convince someone to give you the money. Some options are, you can try to get money from customers, or you can make promises to in the future get money from customers and then seek money from investors. Another option is to try to find philanthropists. And in both cases, you need to care what someone else wants, right? In the customer's case, you need to do something that they want, and the investor has to believe that you'll eventually do something that the customer wants. In the case of philanthropists, you have to do something that the philanthropist wants. So one initial model, which I think misses a lot of important details, is to what extent are the projects that you want to do going to be justifiable by according to the values of the philanthropist and the beliefs of the philanthropist, or the values and beliefs of your customers. So I think that there's some things that seem potentially really promising to do where the philanthropists are a wildly better bet. And the reason for this is that they're fundamentally trying to do the same thing as you. They just maybe believe different stuff. Whereas the investors are just not at all trying to do the same thing as you. They're just maybe incidentally aligned. And so, for example, there's some kinds of work you can do where there's just no way you could convert. It's just for instance, a public good, by which I mean I'm trying to use that word correctly, as in something which is non-rivalrous and non-excludable, where it's just very hard empirically to make money off them. That's the kind of thing where it seems naively you'd expect that a bunch of good products or valuable things for the world are going to be non-excludable, and so it's going to make a lot of sense to try and get philanthropic money for them. I think the basic case for doing good through companies is basically like competing with people who are going to work inside companies to do stuff. So I think maybe Goodfire is an interesting example of this. Like, companies do actually have interpretability teams. And when I'm thinking, like, how should you decide about whether to make an interpretability company versus work inside a company, work inside an AI company on interpretability, it seems like there's a couple of advantages to doing it this way. One is that you can potentially export your effort to more AI companies, which maybe like naively gets you like a 4x increase in value if you think that it's like pretty unclear which companies are going to build powerful AIs. Maybe multiple companies will build powerful AIs. That's pretty nice. The other thing you can do is you get to take on a lot of risk yourself. So for example, suppose there's some technological research direction you could go down. And maybe if you work really hard, then in 2 years, you will have built a great product that the company will benefit a lot from. It's very convenient from the perspective of a company to deal with that as like an outside company that they are buying things from, instead of an internal team that they have to like support for 2 years, because it's much less awkward for a company to like cancel contracts with a supplier than to fire a bunch of people. Or like suppose it's just like companies don't like organizational complexity, because it is in fact very costly for a company to have some team which is doing something according to some random guy's vision that like may or may not totally fail and be completely useless. And so in many cases, I think it makes sense just from a risk structuring perspective to prefer doing work outside companies and planning to sell it to companies for things where you think the companies are eventually going to want to buy it.
There you go. You got the case for and against, and a stronger case for, probably.
You mind if I hop in a little?
For sure.
Yeah, I do think that a lot of kind of direct AGI risk mitigation works probably better as a nonprofit rather than a for-profit, since, yeah, I think like generally the incentives are a little bit more aligned if you're trying to do a very specific thing in the world. I view it as a little bit less of a binary, like kind of we're just purely beholden to customers thing. I think the way that I thought about building this company is, if the method of us earning revenue out in the world and growing our company is aligned with a better future that we want to see, then I'm very, very happy. So it's like, as long as your revenue and your kind of way to make an impact are like fully in lockstep, as that's like what I thought a lot about in terms of crafting, you know, the company as a for-profit. I was thinking about building it as a nonprofit as well. Yeah.
It'd be a really weird coincidence if these things were aligned. Like, naively, that seems very, very confusing, right?
I mean, I think for us, we have to solve a lot of the core kind of fundamental problems with interpretability as a result of, well, raising a gob of money and needing to return a fund. So I think it's very aligned for us, but yeah, I think it is potentially tough.
There are just places where what customers want and what we want for safety is the same, like around insurance or compliance or regulation. You know, a lot of, we just want this stuff. Customers want it. Chevy sold a truck for $1. You know, there's a lot of risk happening here. And there's many places where that isn't true, and many externalities, and we should have, you know, it'd be awesome if there was much more nonprofit funding as well, and it wasn't so intensely concentrated.
Yeah, I'm liking my my like vertical de-integration as core thesis for for-profit AI safety companies thesis, which I just came up with now. But I'm just like, it kind of seems like that's got to be like, that's my current favorite argument. It's just like sometimes, like, if the companies were going to pay for the thing eventually, then you might as well do it outside. And it's just, and then my previous point, which is the thing I was saying before about why nonprofits are sometimes better, is maybe thought of as there are some things which the AI companies are neither going to do nor pay for someone else to do because they don't want it. For example, people like running big ads in the New York Times title which say like AI companies suck or something. And so maybe we should like specialize the for-profits for things that are aligned with the interests of the companies.
Yeah, there's good reasons to also donate politically for these reasons. I think there's like many different paths, right? Like if you want to, if what you want to do is protest outside the labs, there's not like a great case to make it a company and not maybe necessarily as a nonprofit.
Maybe a final point I'll make.
Sure.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you then.
No, that's it.
Yeah, a final point is like startups and nonprofits are also just randomly different for a whole host of other reasons. For example, like San Francisco startup people have a bunch of strengths as like a crowd, and like startups and nonprofits are just going to end up hanging out with different people and attracting different people and having good connections to different people. And in many cases, it's going to be advantageous to do things startup-wise. I feel like just because the crowd you're going to naturally get is kind of different, which might be better for your use case.
Yep. And I think a lot of it is also this question of, okay, what is today incentivized in an external third-party context as a company, as a startup, versus what will be, and what are you building for tomorrow? Because I think, obviously, loss of control is a risk for an enterprise, just putting in a chatbot. Like, this is gonna be a fact, right? You touched shortly also on the funding question. So one of the things we've looked at in the field is also this growth of nonprofit funding within AI safety, where that growth has not been growing. And the growth, I mean, there hasn't been that growth. And so you have sort of seen a bit of a plateau. And that's where I think also we see an opportunity in for-profit. And maybe, Nick, you can talk a bit about this, because you've, of course, had a lot of thoughts on it.
Yeah, I think there's more money than there was before, and not as much money as we thought there would be. And it's still very concentrated. And there's lots of good groups working on, as Buck says, like getting philanthropists to care about this. I don't know that we've done a great job of that beyond what we have done in the last few years, or what existed 10 years ago. And there's places like with sort of upcoming regulations around export controls where we just do need technologies for this. And if they can be, backed by sort of counterfactual money that doesn't care about this, I think that's great. And I think we need more of it. I mean, we can have a much longer conversation about the values baked into the philanthropic money and the incentives from for-profit money, but it's a shame that there isn't as much philanthropic support as we would hope there would be.
Yeah, and I think this is also like a case where we can actually see that there's an effective donation matching. If you invest in a company, suddenly there's a bunch of counterfactual money, as you say, that comes in to invest in a for-profit mission, and you have a lot of money going towards a mission such as interpretability. Now, just to end the discussion a bit here as well, one last question for you, Eric, and then to the rest of the panel, another one. I'm curious to hear from your perspective. We've talked about third-party actors and their potential to influence big labs and government and who knows. Of course, you're sitting with that every day. You're working with the companies, you're working with other actors as well. What has been your experience as a startup founder actually working with the labs and the potential to shape this trajectory we're all on?
Yeah, so right now, our customer base is not kind of the direct kind of foundation model builders directly, although we hope to have them as customers one day. We're working with AI labs building, for example, genomics models, image models, material science models, and focused on kind of a pretty wide variety of interpretability use cases right now. We've also been spending a lot of our time just kind of building out our fundamental research directions. So a lot of this kind of theory of impact and change that we have is by making breakthroughs in the field of interpretability and really kind of advancing the science and the entire field. So yeah, it's been interesting building externally from the large foundation model providers as well. I think we interact with them a lot. We're friends with their MechInterp teams, and they're actually all at a conference right now together as we speak, talking about the future of the field. And so I think we've been just been collaborating closely, and it's been really good to kind of see additional interest in interpretability as well from the AI Action Plan, various nonprofits increasing funding there as well, and I'm just happy to see the increased interest and investment in the field.
Great, thank you. And then to each of you, you've already talked a little bit about it, but what sort of future are you working towards, and then what's your concrete next steps towards that? And maybe starting over here this time.
I think a future with tool AI and not superintelligence. Not really clear how we get there. That's not what I'm going to do here. And I think what I'm excited about, or how we think about generally getting there, is supporting more companies that do this kind of work, and also nonprofits where the incentives are aligned. And also, I think trying to get more people to start companies like this or care about it. If you're interested in starting it, or you know somebody who is, let me know.
Yeah, so I mean, the future that I'm working towards, I feel like I want to say a description of the world that I want things to go well in, but it's not a world I recommend. I think the tool AI stuff isn't going to work, because I think people are going to think about whether the tool AIs work better than the agent AIs. They're going to say, hell no, these work way worse. I don't want to have to like sit around watching my AIs do stuff. I want my AI company to have 200,000 automated research engineer agents working, thinking at 30x human speed, so that I can build superintelligence within 6 months, so that I can crush my enemies or whatever, make $1 trillion. And then I want to make it so that humanity does not lose control during that mad dash. And one level more specific than that, the way that I try to handle that is making it so that at that point where you have those 200,000 research engineer AIs running around doing all this crazy stuff with permissions in the data center that you wouldn't hand out to some random guy off the street, trying to make it so that it's hard for them to grab power and sabotage everything you're doing. And one level more specific than that, I'm currently iterating on a Google Doc that I share with various security professionals, trying to convince them that they should treat misaligned AI as a source of insider threat, sort of similar to human insider threat, except the AIs might all be conspiring against you. So I just work on my wording for that over and over again.
Tough one to follow. But no, I think something that you said there. I want to see us be able to transition to a world with smarter than human intelligences safely, and I think that this is hard to do. Nobody really knows how that'll shake out, and that's kind of I think we're much more likely to transition into that world safely if we understand our models than if we don't. And so that's my personal mission, is like make sure that we actually understand our models at that point, and that's why I feel a bunch of urgency in kind of getting there, in time to actually make an influence and make an impact. And I think that's what pretty much everyone at Goodfire really wants to do. It's just make that impact into kind of advanced interpretability research and build the tools and techniques that are required to intentionally design AI models rather than just kind of build them black box in the way that we do, resulting in, I don't know, Mecha Hitler and all sorts of great stuff like that. I think we just really don't understand why our AI models act the way that they do, and when they have problems, we don't know how to fix them, and your only option that you have is to retrain the entire network. And we think that there's an opportunity for intentional design, and that's our research agenda, and that's what we're kind of working every day to enable in the world. And I think that'll hopefully lead to a better kind of transition.
Great. Wow. Well, we've got a crew saving the world here in various ways. If there are any questions in the audience, I would love to take them now, and to anyone on the panel here, and maybe to all of them. I'll just repeat the questions on the mic, so you just go ahead. But Gregory?
Yeah, I'm curious as folks here and folks in Seldon transition to later stage round fundraising. And I guess this is maybe for Eric and Nick. Do you have any advice on how you approached selecting investors, governance at those later stages, past pre-seed, past seed? Yeah.
Nice. For Eric and Nick, what is a sustainable way to create a next stage sort of investment round for the later stages than our pre-seed here at Seldon? Especially given impact.
Yeah. So maybe I'll tackle the governance thing first. So we're a public benefit corporation. which means we can pursue mission in addition to profits, and we have legal liability coverage as a board of directors to do so. I think that doesn't actually do much. We're still a Delaware C Corp at the end of the day, so at the end of the day, it's pretty similar to just running a for-profit Delaware C corporation. But I think it strikes the right tone, I think, with investors, employees, and kind of gives you a conversational starting point. But I think governance needs to be thought of early. Like, it's really hard to post hoc, add in a different governance, and it's you kind of have to set it like at inception, which is hard because when you're just starting out, you don't really have anything and you don't have that much money, and it kind of costs money and time to do that. So, we spent a good amount of time like kind of thinking this through and making the decisions that we did prior to even our seed round in our A. I think in terms of investor selection, that is deeply important. I think it's really important to have optionality if you can at all swing it, like raise less at a lower valuation, but make sure you have optionality. That's just kind of generally good fundraising advice maybe overall, because the investors that you pick on your cap table deeply matter, and you got to make sure that they're along for the ride and trust you rather than like fight you at any decision point in the organization. And it's really easy to just get like the wrong investor on the board. And so if you have options, then at the very least you can pick the best one who's most aligned. So for us, we are building as a much more of a fundamental research lab than a product kind of scaling up revenue, 3x, 5x every single year. And we wanted investors that would be patient, that would build with us, and that would kind of invest in the long run. And so typically that means very technical investors who don't care about the revenue graph inflecting immediately and care a lot more about like making the right technological investments to get this stuff right, which I think we've done a decent job in finding with our investors at like Lightspeed, Menlo.
Yeah, I think Eric's done a good job in picking investors. We've seen a lot of people do PVCs. We've seen some more people add purpose trust to those, where it's a separate board, right, that has only this as the mission and can fire the current board. We've seen people do, super shares or 10x shares where they maintain control past that. I think all these things are super valuable to do right off the bat. Like, it's a very hard thing to layer on right before you go raise your round or right before your B or whatever. And then I think, Eric Ries has a bunch of other takes on how to do governance well. There's other sort of mechanisms you can use, but also I think if you're not making something with like where the incentives align with safety, I think it doesn't really matter. Once you lose control, it's very hard to shift that. And if you are, then I think you can pull it off, and you can be very nuanced about who you work with. There's also something to be said for long-term capital, that there are a number of investors that are happy to wait, or people that have sort of hybrid strategies or have put money out of a DAF or this kind of thing. So.
Yeah, and maybe I'll also jump in. Like, one of the reasons why we've been really excited about having Eric Ries on board, apropos this governance question, is really that, and we've studied this question quite a bit, how can you defend the mission? And as Nick mentions, you really gotta earn money on safety. That's number one. Number two is the founders and the people involved. It's all power structures, all corporations are just people in the end. And so it's the investors that are relevant, it's the founders that are relevant. The way you can protect founder control is the 10x voting share, so you retain voting control even at a minority equity stake. And then a lot of questions regarding like this public benefit corporation, and most of our companies are as well, is really like layers of armor you put on, but it's not gonna be the silver bullet, right? You just have more, you have more tools in your toolbox as you negotiate with malicious investors, or if there's litigation cases. And then there's very specific silver bullets that you can put in that I've heard of when you IPO or something like this, where you can actually defend this to a very, very specific degree if you want to defend a specific part of your mission.
Zuckerberg still controls more than half the company. Like, there's some things you can do to make it happen.
Yep.
Yeah, it's an example of it going wrong, right? But
any intuitions on? I bet there are a lot of people here who are thinking of being founders. Any intuitions on if AGI does come by December 2027, like, would we have regretted like someone pursued the entrepreneur path versus like doing direct work, trying very hard for like a maths mentorship, maths program or Redwood or something? Any intuitions on advising people to not be a founder? Career contact.
Yeah, I think there's many good reasons to not be a founder. It's rough. But on sort of timelines and counterfactuals, I think it's a good question to ask of anything, right? Like if you decide to get into policy now and you don't have any experience, it's going to take you 10 years. If you decide that you want to like start your undergrad or start a PhD in something that would lead to working at Redwood, it's also going to take you 10 years.
We've had great experiences with our high school interns.
Yeah, it sort of depends on your experience, and I think it's less about like are there short or long timelines, and then what direction do you go in, but more what do you think you can contribute to sort of most quickly. Often, as Eric said, you can like just go start a startup and raise money and do it, and Christian's been shifting a bunch of the regulation in DC, but you could also do this working at Redwood or working in a policy org or working at a different nonprofit, and yeah, I think it's a nuanced question.
I do think more people should start things in general, nonprofits, for-profits. I think there's a need for new organizations in the field.
And I think maybe another risk of moving a bit too fast, sorry, Mark, I moved too fast there, is that you also actually, there's been this question of the scout mindset, and I think sometimes it's a bit misread because you really have to soldier on sometimes with your startups and with your nonprofits. Like the reason why some of the work that we've done over the years has continued and persisted and grown so far is because we stuck to it, right? And so you can always make this counterfactual thing where you have to close it too early or something like this, but actually it's great if the mission is aligned, that you can push through with that as well.
Yeah, my take on the question is basically you have to analyze it on a case-by-case basis. I think there is many companies you can come up with that will have impact upon, have effects on the world within 2 years. Andon Labs had their stuff has had impacts on the world of whatever scale, but they've definitely done something rather than nothing within, I don't know, not that many months. I don't remember when Vending Bench was, like 6 months ago. Yeah. So got to think about it on a case-by-case basis.
For sure. Any last questions here?
If there was a company that you wish was being built right now, what would that be?
What would a potential company be that should exist right now?
Or that you would like to see immediately implemented?
Either somebody doing like supply chain analysis, end-to-end, or physical infrastructure around data centers, like actually thinking about them from the very beginning. Like once you break ground, it's not going to be SL5. So someone, doing this sort of work. But you could ask me like tomorrow and I'd give you a different answer.
I'd be pretty excited for people building hardware that is helpful for security later, that targets worlds where everyone is being incredibly reckless and YOLO-y, but is also willing to spend huge amounts of money. So imagine that you want to get SL5, you have huge numbers of AIs, you're willing to have the AIs work 20% slower because of the incredibly annoying security measures you're imposing, but you need this to work next week. What devices do you buy? So for example, I think one type of security invariant that might be really helpful when you're trying to prevent your 200,000 automated AI agent researchers causing problems is a good sense of where information is going inside the network. And it feels like there's a bunch of basic dongles you could build that just have an Ethernet cable going in both sides and measure some basic stuff about where the information is going from and to and send that off somewhere else. Hardware stuff is annoying to do with a short lead time, but is not that hard to do. I have friends who've just started hardware companies and it's not that rough. There's stuff like that.
Someone is spinning out of Matt's doing compute accounting and thinking about ideas like this, and it's very, very interesting.
I'm excited about security software in general. I think that's where there's budget and that's where there's dollars, and so it's AI security software in general.
Fantastic. And then maybe just a last question for each of you before we round off. I'm curious to understand, of course, this is like a bit of a big topic. It's a heavy topic to work with every day. How does it affect you that we're working on this specific piece of work?
I think most days I'm just heads down building and looking towards the future in a pretty optimistic way. I think we have to build towards a future that we want to see rather than spend much of our time having existential crises and panic. That's every like 2 weeks or so for a few hours, and then I get it out of my system, and then go back to building. And I think I don't know, part of what we've really tried to do is surround ourselves with like-minded people, just really kind of focused on making an impact on the future. And I think that also helps to have a community that cares about the same things.
I would say it's kind of stressful and rough. I don't know. I've been thinking about AI risks since I was like 16 or something. So it's really been I started working at Miri when I was 23. So I've been around this for quite a while. Yeah, it's kind of a bummer. I don't know. It's exciting to be around some people I like and respect a lot. Like I know a lot of people who I think are like genuine heroes and extremely inspiring, and that's a big upside.
I think I feel both. I feel very like optimistic and motivated when I'm working with people that are also that way, and building new things, and motivated by that. I also feel anxious and scared about it. And many of when someone comes and pitches or someone comes and just talks about a problem that they're trying to sort, the problems are not like how do you recover revenue or some kind of standard shitty startup idea. They're like things around these kind of large questions, and while it's like very exciting, it's also stressful, and it's day to day.
Yeah, and if I may chip in as well, like I think this is part of what we want to work on as well. Like it's an awesome mission. It's extremely exciting. It's the most important thing we can do right now. And then on top of that, it's just like very existential. It's philosophical. It's big questions we're working with. And so I think like extreme privilege to be working with people that are actually thinking about this deeply, right? That are considering the consequences and then working towards it. Now, I don't want to. Now I became the last word here. But do you have last words? Anyone here? No.
That's great.
Last word. There you go. Thank you so much, and thank you to our panelists.